not the maybe 15, 20 minutes in to episode 9, when you see them play the Pacers, he doesn't see Antonio Davis.
Mhm.
He's going
Right,
he's
right.
going on the right side, headed towards the baseline, and Antonio Davis is trying to cut him off and hit the brakes, and he gives him a nudge and pulls up for that jump shot. That's an advantage. I mean, like if that's your thing, and we, we always look to see what a player's thing is, what they tend to do. That's his thing. So
I'm
that's a
not sure if Rodney
advantage.
was here in pre-production. It seems like he wasn't. I clearly said we were waiting on this, and he wants to
No,
go
I got you. But
into this in particular. Hey, thank y'all for coming back. This is episode 12 of the Collective Podcast. Thank you, YouTube viewership. Thank you, Anchor and Spotify listenership. Thank you, listeners on all the other DSPs. If you happen to catch clips of this on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, once again, thank you. Please subscribe on YouTube. Please follow on the other DSPs. We appreciate you. I am Anthony Carter, or AEC 360. I have Trey Hopson. Who's Trey Hop. I have Mike Tillery, Hardcore Peace. I have Rod Saucier, Baby Hair 562. And together we are the Collective Podcast. We have a guest today coming in about 10 minutes. Mandla Kayise of former UCLA Bruin, who started his own charter school program, New World Education. We'll let him talk a bit about it. And then being that he's a Chicago native, it's only fitting that he come on this week, right after we had the final 2 episodes, 9 and 10 of The Last Dance. And we have a lot to unpack, a lot to talk about. We're chomping at the bit to talk about several things, including but not limited to the defensive matchup to close out Game 6, Bryon Russell versus Michael Jordan. But we're not going to talk about it now. We'll talk about it in a few. So, how's everybody been since we last recorded? Let's start there.
I've been
I'm
good.
good.
Just
Everything cool.
here at the house, working from home, spending time with the fam bam, and waiting on an update of when things will progress. I'm not going to say return to normal because that's far gone. That other normal that we had. So yeah, man, just being good here at the house. Staying positive. Trying to give out positive energy. Yeah, that's about it right here, man. Having a lot of Zoom dates with friends and family, and really enjoying that. Drinking a lot of wine, having a good time, man. Smiling, trying to smile all the time.
That's what's up. So I thought it was Rod recording from a nursery, but I guess it's Trey. Go ahead.
No, that's
go ahead,
not
Mizzo.
coming from me.
I mean, I'm good. The reason why the lighting probably isn't so good with me is because it is overcast. It has been overcast. We basically had like one good day, which is like the best day ever. And since it's been, it's really windy today. I mean, it actually feels like a winter playoff game in baseball. It's that bad. It's it's different, man. The weather east now. It seems like the seasons transition daily. It's just the weirdest thing. It's been going on for the last 2 years. My daughter's coming up from North Carolina tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
Here,
nice.
But everything else is fine, man. I'm good.
That should be exciting. How long is she gonna stay?
She just staying there for 2 days, man. I get to meet the new dude.
Uh-oh.
How long has he been in the picture?
Hey, be nice. Be nice.
That's gonna give it to you. You know.
How long has he been in the picture?
It's been a little bit, months.
So, okay.
Take him in the basement or the garage, turn the light off, lock the door, tell him to find his way out. And then if he can get through it, he can stay. If he's a punk and he start crying, he can go ahead and take a cab to Union Station and head on back down there by himself.
Man, wow. I'm trying to be good pops. I've been the bad boys pops. That scene with Reggie. I've been there a few times. So they're kind of afraid to meet me at times. But she speaks highly of him. My son speaks highly of him. He seems to be on the right path professionally. I'm excited to meet him. I'm encouraged to meet him. No dad should be excited to meet, someone with his baby girl. But I'm willing to meet him.
Well, end of the day, as long as he make her happy.
That's it, man. That's it.
Make her happy and respect her.
You gotta find out what his vice is, though. Everybody got a vice. You gotta find out what his is. So
it's actually anime. I already been down that path. It's anime. So that's that's pretty harmless. So they both got me watching some crazy stuff. There's this one show on Netflix. There's basically a guy who has recorded years of podcasts, and behind he sets the podcast to like animation.
Okay.
And it was kind of strange at first, but the last episode that I watched was one on Mother's Day where he was talking about the birth and the ultimate death of his mom. It kind of hit me hard. So it kind of makes sense after that. But I think it's a gifted concept, and it may be too smart for a lot of people to decipher. But I finally got him. And she's a brilliant girl. I mean, she had her 4.6 in high school. So sometimes his dad's trying to catch up. But I'm good. I've done my research on them. Just, let me say that. Right?
There you go.
That's dope. I hope he makes it through the obstacle course.
Yeah, you better.
You can always pull a Will Smith, Martin Lawrence on him.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, man. That Reggie scene.
Yeah.
Hey, Mizzo, that's gonna be the first 48, huh? It's gonna be those 2 days.
You better not flinch, young fella. He flinched some. See, man, we recorded, man. You know what I'm saying?
As for me, I'm just doing little household projects, painting, doing stuff in the yard, getting ready to cut some trees down, all that kind of stuff.
Get them, AC.
Reminiscing when they reminisce over you and the ark.
Having a good time messing with you guys, on the web. The virtual questions had me dying laughing.
Oh, that was fun, man. We got to do that. We got to get Nisha on too on the next.
Yeah, that was fun. So I had a good time. That kind of made my weekend.
Because
you're trying to get me a little exercise in, trying to stay busy, trying not to turn into Sherman Clump with the food, and trying to stay sane.
You might want to say hi to y'all real quick.
Hey,
the Mad Kisser.
Hey, so that's a question for you and AC. So when this is all over and sports get back at it, then both of you guys back out there reffing and stuff?
Depending on how soon they start, I'm guessing that I kind of look at it like they're starting to make movements in the majors, and I think it's going to start filtering down.
Oh, okay.
That's just my prediction. I think they're going to test it out and see how the NBA and Major League Baseball does, and then it's just going to filter down to the lower
down effect.
Yeah, that's
what
my.
Sports do you do, Rod? What sports
again?
do you ref? What sports do you ref?
Basketball and football.
Basketball, football.
Yeah.
Okay. AC, when is lacrosse season? When is the season for that?
It was the spring.
Huh?
It was the spring. We were about 3 weeks in.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
When everything got shut down.
Gotcha.
So I'm guessing they'll start with no fans or something, and then they may start to slowly bring it back to normal. But you know, they still. I'm sure AC, you're still getting the emails about virtual camps and stuff like that. So they're having trainings online and stuff like that. But you know, I don't know. For me, that's kind of hard to try to earn a job somewhere in somebody's conference online. You know, a lot of people that say all the right things in a interview or online and get on the field or on the court and don't know what the hell they're doing. So I don't know how that's gonna work. But
I'm sorry. So I think the one thing for that, especially like for you, let's say, can I name the conference, Rod?
Whatever. Come on.
Okay. So let's say the RMAC, right? The Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference for Rod for basketball. He's been to the camp twice or 3 times.
Right.
He's been to the camp twice. The supervisor, Randy Campbell, knows him. So if Rod was on the cusp of earning a job the last couple of years, and I believe that he was, and we have a couple of retirements or people leave the conference for whatever reason, then I think that that's where this still going to the virtual camp comes into play, because you get credit for coming to the camp and then they go just based upon what you did in the past.
Right.
So if someone was going to a camp for the first time, that's different unless they're already established at the Division I level or the Division II level, or whatever it may be. But for you trying to break into Division II, I think that you have an advantage over other people who he hasn't seen, who haven't been to his camp, who he hasn't watched work live. So I think that there is still a benefit there to having the virtual, because you still have a shot at saying, hey, I'm still in your face. I still want the gig. Please consider, and I'm not saying you have to say this, it's just a given. Please consider my body of work. Please consider what you've already seen live. So I think that there's that. But for instance, if there were like a Big Ten virtual camp, it would do nothing for me because, Carollo hasn't seen me work live. So that would be starting from scratch and it wouldn't really make sense. Sorry for boring you guys.
Right.
But for me, just maintaining with Brianna, we're both on our individual missions to change the world through the things that we're doing for ourselves, business-wise. She's well into launching the Bree brand, which is her personal brand, and she's got a YouTube channel, and that's kicking off. And then she just started a business that's called For Her, Roman numeral 4, and then the word her, and that's selling hair with her 2 business partners. And then I got stuff going on, so just really
throwing yours out.
That's not why I'm growing mine out, but that's a good one. That's a good one, right?
Her.
So it's been a good thing, and we've gotten on a couple of Zoom calls with our people and had some virtual get-togethers, and then this week we're supposed to do virtual dinner, actually. So couples getting on Zoom and having a particular restaurant, and we're not getting paid by any restaurants. I won't say the name of it, but we're supposed to hop on it and eat from the same restaurant. Hey, if restaurants want to pay us, hey, we'll mention you.
Exactly.
Not yet. So I just got a call from a 310 number, so I'm wondering if that was maybe Mandla. Let me let you guys talk. I'm gonna call back and see.
Did you guys happen to see the special on South Carolina women's team after the last dance last night?
Because I watched it late. I didn't watch it until probably like 11.
Man, with my old assness, once that second hits where the credits start to roll, I'm out.
You go ahead.
I'm literally out. You know what I mean? I used to be one of the cats that didn't even watch sports from bed, like any kind of sports. Like the ladies or wherever I was with, you know, they were mad at me because I could not watch sports in bed. You know, I just didn't do it. Now, please, you know, give me like the long hat that they used to wear, like the little Santa Claus hat and the blankie, you know, counting sheep. I'm doing whatever. I am out. But I will watch it. I also want to watch the PG County
That was good.
doc as well.
Yeah, I lived in PG County. I love that one.
Yeah. So how did they play it regarding Melo? Was he in that one at all, or they like to associate him with that? And I don't understand.
Well, he was actually from Baltimore, but they actually, a lot of the guys that were talking were from PG County. Melo, they wasn't really focusing on him playing or anything. They may have asked him. Now I got to think back because I don't even remember Melo in there.
Oh, good. That's good. I was just saying, it's weird how they do that with the DMV sometimes.
Yeah, but yeah, they had some players that I hadn't seen in ages in there that were really good back in the day. Some of them, we were talking about this online because someone brought up on my wall on Facebook, you know, why Howard wasn't getting some of those players. And most of the time, the players that come out of the DMV, they end up leaving the DMV area.
Mm-hmm.
They're all over the place. I mean, you'll see somebody in Texas, Florida, you know, Connecticut, some, you know, Georgetown gets some, you know, for the most part, or VCU, but a lot of times those guys they leave. I don't know if they feel like they need to get away from the area for whatever reason, but they don't stay. So, you know, those are the guys that are at the cream of the crop. And then the guys that are underneath them, you know, they still get to mid majors a lot of times somewhere, and they leave. And then those HBCUs like Howard and some of the other surrounding schools, they get whatever's left.
Mm-hmm. Did they talk to Coach Nickelberry at all?
No, not in that. Not in that.
It's a shame what happened to him and Howard.
Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Nick.
Yeah, he was doing his thing. Football, it just went through the ringer, I guess. So I don't have to use a colorful word. I don't know what was going on, but they were getting killed every week, and not just by D1 teams. That's a topic for another day. You know, these smaller schools playing teams like Florida State and West Virginia, and the score is like 80-0, and they're trying to do whatever they can for a payday. Um, you know, that's a huge issue that goes back and forth. But I know when I went to Howard, the coach at the time, I won't name his name, but he didn't like recruiting kids from the inner city, and not just the DC area inner city, but any inner city. He always felt that they weren't disciplined enough. They were, uncoachable, and he just because at the time when I went, there were guys walking around who could seriously hoop. I mean, really hoop from Chicago, from LA, from Philly, from different places, can really get down, and they weren't on the team. So he just recruited right there in the DMV area, but no one from the city. It
Mm,
was always someone an hour, 2 hours outside the city.
that's a shame.
Yeah,
Mm.
and then they just come and get killed.
I spoke with Howard a bunch of time on various panels, man.
Yeah, yeah. Sports wise, it wasn't what I thought it would be before I arrived there.
Mhm. Really?
Academically, it was better than I thought, um, but sports wise, it wasn't what I thought. You
Yeah.
know, I went into the mentality of, man, all black school, they got to have athletes there somewhere.
Mhm.
They should be able to hoop, to play football, to do everything. And then you
Mm.
get there and you're like, he's 6'11". How did he miss the whole rim? Like you start looking at stuff like that, and you're like, man, this is why you weren't recruited in bigger schools. Uh, and you can really see it. Now it's gotten better over the years. I see some players that actually can play.
Mhm.
Like Howard has had a couple of high scores, nationally ranked high scores, but it definitely wasn't what I thought
Mm.
at all.
One of my best interviews was SID Doc Hill.
Hmm.
Um, Doc Hill is a legend there, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, he just gave me a great story around Steve McNair. When Steve McNair died, um, Doc is the man.
Yeah.
He really was the man. It was a sad day when he retired. It was celebratory also because of how legendary he was. With most of the students. I'm honored to know him. I wish him well in his retirement. I got to see him right before he retired. I was at a Howard Hampton game.
Mhm.
Um, which obviously a big game. But yeah, shout out to Black Hill, Shaman.
It's a big game depending on your perspective.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Rodney would say it's not a big game.
you're at Howard or Hampton. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I'm saying because Rodney from Howard likes to say that's a meaningless game because Hampton can't deal with them. Like, so that's what I mean.
Hampton
Right.
Institute. Hampton Institute. That place.
Hampton Institute.
Junior Howard.
The Hampton Inn.
Yeah.
And it was.
But speaking of McNair, rest in peace. He's probably one of the best players I've ever seen play college football
Yeah.
live. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Alcorn State played Howard. He was doing things that you just could not believe was possible from the
Yes.
quarterback
Yeah.
spot. He was
Yeah.
he was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I left the stadium amazed, like, wow,
Yeah.
dude is the real deal.
The way he can throw the ball. I mean, especially on, that field,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's small and the field just looks so small in comparison with him doing the things he was doing on that field.
yeah.
He was flinging the ball, man. It was what?
And this is when Howard actually was good, and when they had a tough defense. I mean, they had this dude on the run and he's throwing on the run 40, 50 yards downfield like it's nothing. He made it look easy.
Yeah.
Like there was no stopping him.
Mm.
And I said, man, this dude is probably the best player. At that point, he was the best player I'd ever seen play college football.
Mm. Mm.
And I've seen some guys, at bigger programs, but they didn't wow you like that.
Mm.
Nothing like that.
They should have just given him a Heisman just because they didn't give it to Willie Totten back in the day.
Something. But that dude was the real deal. And they don't really speak about him as far as great quarterbacks in the NFL, which I think is crazy. Because he held it down for years. There was never a talk of, well, let's bring in someone else just to push him, or let's see if this guy can unseat him, or we see this guy that could be a really great quarterback in the future. Let's try to move up in the draft and maybe deal McNair. There was never talk like that from what I heard when he was on the field. I mean, he brought it with Tennessee. But yeah,
That's his coach, man. They should have drafted Randy Moss. That might have been his length could have been a difference in tying up that Super Bowl.
Yeah. And ever since you made that point weeks ago about black quarterbacks not being given weapons, I've given that some serious thought. And he really didn't have a go-to receiver.
Mm-mm.
He had great return receivers like Dyson and players that can, be great in the return game and occasionally get you a good first down or a deep ball here and there. He definitely didn't have anybody on the Moss level, or we don't even have to take it that high. We can say receivers less than that, but he didn't have it on that level to accomplish what he accomplished over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Those were number twos, number threes at best that he had to work with, but he made it work.
He'll eventually get into the Hall.
Yeah, even when Eddie George declined, he was still making it work.
Yeah. He would have games where he would be 4 for 20, and then gut it out at the end and
Right.
bring the team back. Both in Tennessee and Baltimore. I rocked this jersey. There was one time, matter of fact, you guys appreciate this.
What about Houston?
Huh?
What about Houston?
And I'm talking about, before I became a writer, in 2000, I went out to see, it was a February game. It was LA versus Minnesota.
Okay.
And, I'm a tourist, sitting next to Pete Sampras. I actually bumped into Vanessa Williams and like to fainted, but pregame, it was right after the Super Bowl, obviously, that year. And I walked up to Isaac Bruce wearing a Steve McNair jersey and asked him to sign an autograph. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "Where's the pen?" And act like I couldn't even find my pen at that point. I guess, of course, they're just coming off a Super Bowl, so the competitive fire was still there. And he probably looked at the jersey like, who is this dude? I was just trying to appreciate the greatness of Isaac Bruce. Him and Torrey Holt were two of the best tandem of receivers than the game has ever seen. So I was just trying to appreciate him. But I guess
small stretch.
I guess he thought because it's the Staples Center that everybody's used to the celebrity there. So who was this guy coming from? I was living in Delaware at the time. Who was this guy coming from Delaware? Asking for an autograph. He was with his girl. maybe I overstepped the boundary. I don't know. I mean, it's different now. I'm a writer. I see those guys all the time. But
yeah,
I just
that's
that
what's
game, I could not imagine how I could not. Shaq's feet was so big. The first time I saw Shaq in person.
That's what's up. Let me break in. So first of all, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to episode 12 of the Collective Podcast. I already have the artwork. I already have the title. I'm not telling y'all. I'm going to tell y'all. The title of this episode is You Gotta Come Through Chicago. And I know that everybody knows what I'm talking about. You know who I'm quoting. Manla's going to get excited about that. By the way, thanks again for tuning in to episode 12 of the Collective Podcast. Thank you, YouTube viewership. Thank you, Spotify and Anchor listenership. Right now, I want to take some time to introduce Mandla Kayise, my mentor from UCLA. He's the founder and CEO of New World Education. And I think that he will do himself more justice than I will do him. So I will pass the mic to him and let him talk a little bit about himself, a little bit about New World Education, and then we're going to get down to the last dance, baby. Mandla.
Welcome, brother.
Oh, thanks, fellas. It's good to be in the space. I appreciate getting a couple of minutes to just listen to you all, so I know exactly what I'm getting myself into. But as Anthony indicated, I'm an educator, lifelong education consultant. I started out at UCLA developing a support program for African American students, and that grew into a center on the campus where Black students and other students of color were able to create their own peer support program. So, we created a center for students to support themselves and get through the campus and be able to demonstrate that they maybe knew some things that would be conducive to their success that maybe the campus generally, as a predominantly white institution, historically predominantly white, now definitely just a small percentage of Black students. But we figured that Black students had some ideas about how we could retain ourselves and get through successfully. And so we developed a program to support ourselves as students and then shared that with other underrepresented groups to do so. Did that work for about 10 years, and now I share peer support and student empowerment strategies across the pipeline, high school, community college, and university students, enabling them to kind of take control of their educational experience. And really what the philosophy that we share is taking ownership of the institution itself, taking ownership of their own educational experience and developing the capacity to make schools work for them. And when Anthony talked about me for coming on, I was curious about whether or not it would be a good fit for the kind of discussion that you all have. But I did share with him that I use a lot of sports analogies because I think student athletes are equally challenged in terms of taking ownership of their own futures, trying to be able to put themselves in a position where they can dictate their own success and not have it dictated by what school they happen to go to, or what coach they happen to have, or what system they happen to play in. And you really see that playing out in the sports world right now, where at least some of the top athletes are able to empower themselves and really dictate the terms of their continued ability to practice their craft. I used in one sports talk radio interview, I used Kobe Bryant as an example of the kind of empowerment that we talk about for students. And so I think it's very applicable to the sports world. And I'm always excited when I'm able to work with student athletes around these principles, because I think student athletes, while they're some of the most talented and in some ways very privileged members of our society, they're also often some of the most disempowered, some of the most dependent upon others to make decisions for them. And we've seen a lot of tragic outcomes for some of our best athletes because they weren't in control of their own fate, and others who did control their fate either were irresponsible with that control or just didn't have their best interest at heart in the first place. So I'm pushing empowerment and taking control of your future in every arena, whether it be sports or education or any other profession, and always looking for folks who are examples of that principle. And the last thing I'll say is how impressed I was with LeBron's production the other night around Graduating Together, which he produced and pulled. People were calling it Obama's commencement speech for high school students. But the fact of the matter is, LeBron produced that event and, made that thing work, put the whole package together. So, you have to give credit to an athlete who's able to use his platform in such a powerful way, make a statement that is carried by all of the major network stations, that's devoted to them, and able to engage all those young people in kind of taking control of this moment, not allowing this moment to kind of dictate what happens in the year of their graduation, and allow them to participate and celebrate their own graduation in a way that they could actually have some input on, if not total control. So talking about empowerment and talking about sports comes easy to me. I'm a big sports fan. Anthony had the unfortunate fate of having to defend me on many occasions. So, I dropped a couple on him on the court every once in a while. So I'm right at home in this conversation. Let's go ahead and get it started.
Which takes us back to the men's gym discussion, because that's what he's talking about. And Trey and I talked about men's gym last week. Many a 7 a.m. battle occurred in men's gym.
Yeah,
with Mandla and some of his buddies.
Yeah. Well, we had a good thing going on in the men's gym up there. It was put together as a mentorship space for Black males and other men of color who played basketball. And we actually had, university administrators coming at 7 a.m. and playing ball with students. We had some of the coaches from the basketball team, Michael Holt and Steve Lavin and those guys from part of that crew of coaches, seasoned ball players, some veteran staff members like myself, and just students who were interested in playing, getting up in the morning, 7 a.m. It was both a exercise space, but it was also a mentorship space, because a lot of relationships with, grown ass men were developed for those students, where they could kind of learn and kind of get some mentorship that you won't get in the classroom in that space. So it was a beautiful thing, that 7 a.m. league we had going. Lisa Leslie came up there and balled. It wasn't just men. Lisa Leslie balled with us on a regular basis up there at 7 a.m. It was a great space.
Mm-hmm. Man, I got a question. What do you think, and how could you put into words the experience of this COVID era, where kids, as you talked about earlier, lost this year? What did colleges lose, as well as the individual college student lose, and also what did they gain through the online experience? I mean, there's going to be so many kids, specifically athletes, who will not get that chance to, in a clutch, show what they were talented to do on the campus, and it's going to set a lot of people back. But how can they be encouraged, through this virus, so they can continue on and show their wares on the next level, whatever that can be?
Yeah, man, that's an excellent question, and I will try to adequately address it from the position that I'm in, because as an education consultant who is, I'm contracted by the campuses and the programs that I work with. So I was in, on March 16th, I was in absolute 100% panic mode as to whether my contracts would make it through this COVID-19 period myself. So I had to make a really quick pivot, And so one of the first things that I did was I looked at a lot of the method that I use. I have a method that I call the house method, holistic unlimited student empowerment. And I had to look at how people were affected, just as you're saying. And so what I decided to do was to engage the students in that question. I showed them one of our typical goals worksheets, and I put these clouds on, and the clouds represented the COVID-19. And it impacted them academically, and it impacted them socially. It impacted every aspect of their life. But what we were able to do was provide them a space to kind of talk about how it impacted their goals. What was the effect on their goals? So when you talk about the student athletes, man, the impact on their goals was huge, just coming out the gate. I have goals, maybe go to a next level, be able to demonstrate what I'm able to do. Some of the high school athletes unable to play in championship games and demonstrate what they're able to do at a time where a lot of big decisions are being made. And then we also looked at how they could adjust or pivot as a result of that negative impact. What could they do to kind of adjust and try to, minimize that impact on what they're trying to do? And I haven't had that conversation with student athletes specifically, so it's difficult to kind of speak to that without having had that with them directly. But I do think there's a couple of things that people are able to do more effectively now than they might have been able to do prior to this. So number one is accept the fact that your organization and your discipline is your own. Take ownership of your own your program. So training program. Folks were going to have to go home and devise a way to kind of stay in shape and to continue to train by remote and from their house for the most part, at least from their kind of local area around them. So those athletes who were empowered in that way, they put together training programs for themselves that in some ways might be superior to what they were getting in a coach's program. So, or maybe they didn't have a top trainer, so they weren't getting a top conditioning program. So they were able to use all of the online resources available to them, construct a training program for themselves that gave them some confidence, and actually have ownership over their own conditioning, their own preparation from this point forward. So they won't be dependent upon a coach or whoever calls them in the morning or whoever's putting together that training program for them. They'll be able to initiate that for themselves going forward. The other thing I think, if they use the online platform, and that's the other thing about it, is the online platform. The upside of it is that it has given me the opportunity to be connected with audiences that otherwise I would have to travel to. So while you might not have the quality of contact with people, what you could have is easier access and maybe a greater quantity. So using the online platforms, the phones that people have that they haven't really been using as learning tools or networking tools or team building tools, folks were forced to do that. Students were forced to engage, school online, engage their classmates online. So for student athletes who are building together and checking in with one another around their training programs, checking in with one another around their plans for next year, checking in with one another to make sure maybe their team stays together and their team stays focused on what they're capable of doing if and when this pandemic, kind of subsides and people are able to re-engage. They're able to learn how to use the tools that have already been at their disposal to build better, more cohesive groups and communication between and among themselves. And again, that's something that can carry over into the next phase. So I think, those are just a couple examples of how what I think I've been doing with students and parents educationally might apply to the world of the athletes. Nothing can, replace or compensate for the actual ability to perform, right, in a student athlete's case. But certainly there are things in preparation to perform that folks can engage in now and have the time to do. You talk about folks being students of the game. How many student athletes who aren't students of the game have the opportunity right now to just devote their time and energy to learning the game, looking through all the videotapes that are available online, doing some reading, looking at the quotes and the mindset of all the great athletes that preceded them, and just upping their game mentally right now. They actually have more time and more opportunity to engage in that kind of development as an athlete right now than they did before. So I think folks will have to kind of trade out I love your question, because you talk about what are people losing. They're losing that time actually practicing and putting themselves in a position to be seen by others. But what they're gaining is an opportunity to invest in themselves, take greater ownership of their own training and potential and their own understanding of the game. And the difference that will be right now is who was able to make that pivot and not allow this to just be lost time, but to gain in the ways that they're able to gain, even though they have to sacrifice in the ways that are lost that can't really be recaptured.
Wow, that's some great insight. Thank you for that, Mandla. And I guess I'll ask you to continue that answer, but from an academic perspective, do you believe that, and I don't know how many conversations you've had with the student athlete in particular, but I guess you can answer for all students, and we're talking university right now. So when we talk about college students overall, do you believe that the majority of them, or the majority of them that you came into contact with, took advantage of or utilized the online platform to stay engaged with their studies through this time?
The majority did not, and unfortunately, my impression with our student athletes is they did not as well. That the people who work with our student teachers, even counselors and others, too often in their efforts to support students, they create a certain amount of dependency, right? And so when that person isn't there, those students, they don't know what to do. It's like, my teacher's not here, I'm not communicating with my teacher, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do what I would rather do, and I'm going to spend my time, just chilling. And I think a lot of times that's the same way with a lot of our student athletes. They're dependent upon the coach, and the coaches. You have certain coaches who could be described as kind of an empowerment coach, a player's coach. They give a lot of power, they give a lot of decision making, they give a lot of they create a lot of space for student athletes to decide how successful that they want to be decision makers in their own development as student athletes. There are coaches who are sometimes more successful than other coaches, who produce players who think more like coaches when they're on the court or on the field, and there are coaches who have greater control. And I hate to throw him under the bus. He took us to two Final Fours, 3 straight Final Fours, and he took us to a championship, right? A game that we lost. Coach Ben Howland. This is one of the things that really compromised him, is that he coached in such a way where the players were always looking to the sideline for the next guidance, for the next play. That's the opposite of the kind of coaching that we're talking about, and that student athlete, when they're left to their own devices without the coach around, you've cultivated in them a dependency on the coach for every decision that they make. And so they can't make good decisions when they're in the absence of their coach. Those coaches who cultivated more independence, more critical thinking, more involvement in the decision making among their student athletes, they're more likely to have student athletes that are going to be taking advantage of an opportunity like this to kind of figure out, what is it that I can do for myself during this period, and let me go ahead and upgrade in those areas, even though I'm making sacrifices in the other areas. So the short answer is, man, it's probably the precious few, the small percentage that actually have been used in this time period to engage in that way. And you can usually find them when you find the coaches that have cultivated that kind of independent thinking in their student athletes. And that, unfortunately, that's still a rare breed, even though we have some examples of folks who've been very successful in that way.
Okay. I definitely appreciate that. So let's keep it in this space, talking about school. We've had a couple of high profile potential one and dones coming out of high school this year that were going to go to college, like, for instance, Daishin Nix, who was going to come to UCLA, decommit from the schools that they committed to and decide to utilize that new rule where they can just go straight to the G League for a year, make 6 figures, and then they still have the year off before they go to the NBA, but they don't have to burn it in school. What do you think about that rule change overall? And then what do you think about the people that decided in the first place that they were going to go to 1 year of school and then have decided to decommit since this has happened?
Well, that's a tough call, Anthony, because one of the things that I am a proponent of is student athletes and their families being able to make the decision that's going to be best for them and their family. I'm a proponent of that. And I think that our colleges, folks, I think incorrectly, talk only about, your opportunity to get a degree or your opportunity to get a free education, and how people are trading that in order to go pro earlier. I think the real selling point for the university, if you wanted to kind of make the pitch to a student athlete that they should stay, they should maintain their student status for maybe a year or even two longer is the growth possibilities. You know, what can a student athlete gain from continuing to engage with their peers, continue to be in a space that where they can learn. They have time to kind of develop their mind, develop their maturity, develop some social skills, maybe even some money management skills. You know, be in an environment where there's a lot of resources available to them that just allows them to grow and be independent and you know, develop some skills and some knowledge that when they do go pro will enable them to be a more independent minded and a more self-sufficient uh, athlete once they do get to the pros. Now, if you've got around you the rarest of rare, a team like a team LeBron, you know, the way they've been able to empower themselves in the league and in the sports industry and allow him to be kind of you know, independent and you know, more in control of his own fate. I mean, I think they've really set the model for that. Then by all means, you know, going straight pro might be the best thing for you. But if you're a relatively you know, underdeveloped young person and you don't have a strong team around you that can help you navigate that environment, then you're really fish bait going into the NBA early, you know, and there are people who may not have your interest in heart who can take a lot of advantage for you. And so sometimes maintain your student status for at least a year just to grow and be in a position to maximize your potential when you get to the pros would be the better move. I'm not opposed to the rule. I'm more, again, I'm speaking to how we advise and support our student athletes, how we paint a picture of what kind of man do you need to be if you're going to really be able to take full advantage of this professional sports platform, as opposed to it exploiting and taking advantage of you and you being spit out after a couple of years with no other alternative future set up for yourself, no resources. I've seen too many of those stories. And, you know, and you know, working at a UCLA for 10 years, I did get to know the majority of the Black student athletes, you know, from the time that I was a student there to the time that I left there as a staff member. And there are just too many cautionary tales of folks who, yes, had the potential to go pro, yes, even had the need and the urgency in their families to earn their level of income. But man, where are they now? They didn't develop as people. And I don't think that the colleges sell that idea enough. And then I think the athletic departments don't cultivate that value of being a student athlete. You're at a university, so yeah, you're here, and we want to get every drop of blood out of you in terms of what you can do on the field or on the court. But you're also in an environment where you can grow as a person and develop some skills. I mean, you know, just networking with other college students. You know, you don't even want to begin to think about the pool of entrepreneurs that are there, the people that are creating businesses for themselves that they will use for a lifetime, the people that are creating relationships that they'll take into politics or the professional world or whatever. You know, lifelong relationships of people they'll be collaborating with and you know, creating successful paths for themselves. Like you take a guy like Barack Obama, you know, these are people that he met in his youth who were a part of his administration, you know, and they went to school together. They developed those relationships and their ability to do that while they're in school. So college is an opportunity to build that kind of a network and that kind of capacity in yourself. And so to encourage a person to jump before they're ready, just to make that money and then get chewed up by a professional league and spit out after a couple of years, that's where the real crime is. And it's a case by case basis, Anthony. But at the biggest part of it is that as a society right now, we are not presenting college as an opportunity to grow as a person. We're just limiting it to whether you're going to get a degree or not. With my students, I really was not that focused on whether they got a degree or not. There are students that I worked with who grew tremendously, but didn't get a degree and were able to use that growth when they left. And then there are others who got a degree but didn't grow much at all and weren't able to do nearly as much when they got out. So it really is not about a degree. It's about the environment and the resources and the relationships that are available to you.
Absolutely. That's powerful.
Very powerful.
I definitely appreciate that. You're muted, Mizzo. You talking to us?
Yeah. What are college kids like now? I mean, you know, when I was in school, we were all focused on, you know, getting Nelson Mandela out of jail and also divestment from South Africa. You know, in 1990, you know, I mean, obviously he was released by the clerk, and that was like a big thing for us. What's the consciousness of kids today, like in this social media space, that there's so many distractions and so many things affect them now? Is the consciousness still as pure as it was? You know, I'm old, so but you know,
you my age. Don't worry about it.
You can't be older.
I'm anti-apartheid era too. But I'm different from my peers. Like because of the kind of work I do and because of student empowerment based, I learn and grow as much from my students as I contribute to them. And I think the consciousness among this group, this cohort of young people is incredibly high. I mean, I'm impressed. Look, the Black Lives Matter movement, whatever we think about it, it has some pluses and some minuses. It's got some upsides and it's got some contradictions. But man, it has taken off globally. It's got people all over the world wanting to claim blackness. And you know, they've changed the conversation 100%. So I think they have a high level of consciousness. They don't have that kind of a global issue that we had to kind of rally around and kind of build our consciousness. But I do think they are about social change. They're very independent minded. They're not go along, get along type of people. They're super ambitious in terms of, you know, all of them think they're supposed to have their own entrepreneurial business. They're all supposed to blow up on social media somewhere. They all think they're superstars in the making, which I love. You know, their idea of who they are and who they can be, it's unchained, man. There's no limitations on their expectations of who they can be. That gets them in a little trouble sometimes because, you know, the work ethic and the creativity's got to keep up with the image of who you say you are. You go on LinkedIn. Like I'm on LinkedIn, and when the young people come on LinkedIn with me, man, they talk about what they're doing. All of their titles, like, you know, we have traditional positions on there, like I'm a teacher or I'm an education consultant or I'm an attorney, right? They got some shit that they made up, and I don't even know what it is. A social influencer, and you know, I'm a game changing, a creative curator and shit. You know, they got all kind of language, right? And they make it up. They make up jobs, which I love, because what they're doing is they're carving out lanes for themselves. They're not allowing the traditional dictate who they are and what they're able to do. So I like their level of consciousness. Does it need some development? Does it need guidance? There's no question about it. And that's part of the reason why I have such strong relationships with a lot of the young people. They actually appreciate the guidance, but they have a minimum expectation. If I don't appreciate their style and how they get down and what they're bringing to the table, then they're not hearing none of my guidance that I'm bringing. So it's a quid pro quo. And so I meet them where they are, and they're actually seeking that guidance. They want to know those lessons from older people of what they did, but they don't want it at the expense of being respected for who and what they're bringing to the table in this generation. They don't want to hear old stories about what we did during our time and that being compared to how they ain't doing nothing today. That's a turnoff for them. You know, so that's really what it's looking like right now. But I have great relationships, man, with some outstanding young student leaders who are far ahead in their capacity and their thinking than I was when I was their age.
That's what's up. Hey, Marlon, one thing you don't know, because you don't know the rest of the guys on the panel, but Baby Hair 562, that's Rod. And Rod was on the Ark with Noah. And so he's been around for quite some time. So anytime that we reminisce, Rod's got all the stories, and so we always defer to him. And let him break it down for us. So I want you to know you were definitely in the presence of greatness. That dude has lasted through all the pandemics. So
I gathered the quality of the group just from the conversation I was listening to when I came in. I mean, it was a high level of discussion about, you know, where some of these issues are with our athletes today. So really appreciate the discussion I came into.
Absolutely. So listen, does anyone else have anything on education before I turn the corner? Because I've been waiting to introduce this topic.
So I'm getting ready. Wait,
All right. Okay. So Mandla Kayise on the campus of UCLA, he's as humble as it gets outside of sports. But when it comes to sports, that competitive juice kicks in and he talks. He talks. So for a guy who's a lifelong Laker fan, but who supported Pat Riley in the 90s, someone who supported Pat Riley for his entire career, was it fun jabbing Mandla during the times that the Knicks were going head to head with the Bulls. And, I always have the dunk, which is the Adidas poster with John Starks taking off on Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen, and Michael Jordan. But that's like it. Like, that's the only thing that I could give him, like that dunk. Charles Smith just missed another layup. Another putback. Charles Smith is still missing putbacks. Just absolutely killing me. But it was always
That's
fun to experience Jordan with Mandla, who has a Chicago background and just really did profess the things that Jordan would do, and he was a great narrator of what Jordan was doing. So it was always fun to talk to him about these things. And so I've hit him a couple times during this documentary, The Last Dance, to talk about some of the memories, like the dunk. John Starks does have the distinction of having the dunk that's called the dunk in that poster.
Yeah.
And then another thing that we talked about was the push off. Come on, man. This Bryon Russell send him
I didn't watch the episodes 9. I didn't watch the episodes 9 and 10 last night. So
send him flip, and I didn't even realize.
If I feel like I need to conveniently opt out on that question, I will do so. I missed the episode last night. That'll be my excuse.
Let's see. Let me describe it for you. Jordan, Bryon Russell guarding him. Jordan is on the left side. He goes to the right. Bryon Russell is a little bit wrong-footed and turns and gets a little bit of help on his right butt cheek from Jordan's left hand, and he's thrust onto the floor, and now Jordan has an open jump shot to make a three. Now, when Bob Costas talks about this on the documentary, Bob Costas says, yeah, I still don't know what all the hullabaloo is about. When you look at that, he barely touched him. He didn't affect him at all. He was already going that way. And basically, it was like a maitre d' taking you to your table. It didn't affect him at all. That's crap. Hey, I'm not going to have the argument about greatest of all time and all that. Look, that's the most pronounced offensive foul, no call in the history of the game.
Oh, come on. Come on.
AC, if you don't remember, if you don't
get him, Trey Hop.
That playoff series in Western Conference when
oh boy, always does this.
Houston, Karl Malone basically mugged Clyde Drexler before that Stockton shot to catapult him into the finals. I can't believe that the refs didn't call that mugging. It was something that Kevin Garnett has been called for consistently the entirety of his career. Karl Malone basically surrounded his arms, like gave Clyde Drexler this embrace that almost will make his.
So you're saying he was showing him love during the game?
Yes, at the Stockton's last shot. Go check that tape.
I saw it.
Stockton's shot to beat them in that game, to send them into the finals. Remember, there was a whole thing about Barkley, going to the finals with that Houston team that he went to, and they had the little Scottie thing. Him and Scottie had the thing where it didn't work. Was that year? No, that must have been later because
Scottie was there later. Yeah.
Yeah, that
No,
was
That was before.
No, this-
wasn't
that was 95.
Yeah.
He was on the team that didn't win when they went back to back.
it? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right. But check that shot, man. Check that shot and watch Karl Malone grab up. And I hated Utah. So I mean, I was glad that Mike hit that shot and gave him a little pat on the ass on the way by.
okay, well, at least you are calling it like you saw it. At least you're just saying, "Hey,
Okay.
I hated Utah." So da 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 da.
Here it is.
Hey, how about
gotta
this?
let the
Almost
players-
wait. Let me hold on 1 second, Trey. Hey, Mike, guess what? I hated Utah too, and I didn't hate Chicago. But what happened is what happened, and I guess we won't go through all of the push-offs because even Reggie Miller on the shot that he made on Mike, like you can't really say he made it on Mike because he sent Mike to half court with that push-off. And so I get it. And of course, the mugging of Greg Anthony, like I'll never believe that none of that was called. His 15 points in 8 seconds was just disgusting. But for Mike to sit up there and say, I didn't touch him or whatever he said, I didn't, he was already going that way. Come on, you're not that naive. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Trey.
So check it out. You got to let the players decide the game. In a game like that, you got to let the players decide.
I can't wait for Rod to follow this.
Here we go.
All right.
In today's game, okay, let me ask you this then. Did Bryon Russell flop at all on that play?
No.
No.
Trey, you have to know what momentum is. You're a world-class dancer. You know what momentum is, Trey. Stop playing.
I know what momentum is, but I also know what 200 and something pounds of a solid, strong man is. Jordan didn't push him that hard. He didn't push him.
He was already going. No, he was already wrong-footed, Trey. So he was going that way, but he wasn't allowed to stop at that point. Come on, just look at it again with a different perspective. And Rod's about to eat you up on that. Let the players decide the game. Go ahead, ref.
I've looked at it many times, and no, man.
You have a closet. You have a closet full of Jordans, so you're not objecting. Go ahead. Go ahead, Rod.
I'm not.
All right. So if you watched the episodes last night, Reggie Miller told the whole story in one sentence. He said when they played Chicago for
everybody was scared.
Eastern Conference Finals, the one thing he pointed out was, I've been watching the history of how the officials officiate, and I know that they don't like making calls at the end of games. And that's why I ran into Jordan and pushed him off. And he admitted he pushed him off, which he did,
right,
and got that ball and took that shot and won the game.
And that was to my point, what I was saying. Now, in today's game, they definitely call an offensive foul. But that wasn't the game.
No, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't.
You're delusional.
That part of the game hasn't changed. Now, it's not to say, well, we want to let the players decide the game. You decide in the game either way. So that's a media tactic to say, oh,
misnomer.
Refs shouldn't make a call. They should let the players decide. The players are already deciding. You deciding when you push that man in the back that you getting ready to commit an offensive foul. So if it goes against you, you can't be mad. But if you know the history of the game and you know that they don't like making calls in the last minute, then I'd take my chances too.
Yeah.
I mean, like if players come to me during a game and they say, ref, you're not gonna call that? No, not now, not later, and not when the clock hits 3 zeros. I'm not gonna call it.
Okay.
Right. They say, well, what am I supposed to do? You better try to do what he's doing and see if you can get away with it. That's my answer.
If you were positioned on the
I can't
floor
believe
line,
we're having this conversation.
yeah, where would you?
I can't believe we're having this conversation.
As far as the Jordan play, I'll give you an example. If you're running on a football field, you're running full speed. At about the 2, you slow down to try to come to a stop. Let's say you're trying to keep the ball from going end zone. So you hit the brakes before you get to the goal line, like most players do, to bat the ball back. Right?
Yeah.
If you're already on your tiptoes trying to make sure you don't cross that line, and somebody barely bumps you in the butt and you fall in the end zone, what happens? Is that your momentum taking you, or is that somebody pushing you? I give you another one.
Let me ask you this question.
There's a difference between getting pushed by Allen Iverson and a push by Shaq. If Allen Iverson barely pushes you, you won't feel it. If Shaq barely pushes you, he'll tell the ref, I barely touched him. His barely touch compared to the other barely touch, completely different. Right?
True.
Jordan ain't no weak dude.
Neither was Russell.
But Russell's momentum was already taking him in that direction. So if your momentum is taking you to a direction and then you get pushed on top of it, you can't stop. His whole thing was, when you watch the play, he was trying
to ask you this.
Spot
if
Jordan
if he doesn't push him, does he make the shot still, you think?
We don't know. But Byron Russell has a better chance of recovering if he doesn't get pushed. He doesn't have a chance to recover.
Right. And here's the big thing. Trey.
I can't believe we're having this conversation.
No, but Mala, just in fairness, this is not the same discussion that we had in This is not the same discussion that we had in 19.
Real quick, Mandla, that's good or no good?
Good.
Good.
He's Chicago. He's Chicago all day.
Forevermore. 10 out of 10.
But
10 out of 10.
Let me be clear. We're not having this discussion in 1998 when he and I had it, and I'm like, yo, they should have called that. I'm not saying in 2020 that they should have called it, but what we did learn, and you guys can be as naive as you want about this, what we did learn during this documentary is that in a lot of ways, MJ, Michael Jordan, come on, man, we know he's not that naive. He's saying a lot of things that he can't really believe. And this is one of those things when he says that I had no material effect on that play by giving him that nudge. You can't believe that. You can't believe that. Like, you see that you did. Here's the thing. They weren't going to call it. That's all good. Just say, hey, I got away with one.
Right.
I got away with one and made the greatest shot in NBA history.
Why would I do that?
Because that would add to his greatness, Mandla. If he admitted, if he showed a human side, as opposed to this crap where he's laughing at Gary Payton, like Gary Payton couldn't have locked him up if he had him for that whole series.
But it was Bryon Russell. It was Bryon Russell, and
I loved every minute of
the whole series. Jordan was trenching him the whole series.
Trey, let me remind you, that was game 6. If that shot doesn't go in, we go to game 7.
But it went in.
Right. And it may have gone in even if it was if he played fairly.
How about this?
I'm not saying he wouldn't have.
You could say this also. Karl Malone probably scored 10,000 extra points in free throws, and he taken longer than 10 seconds at the free throw line.
Why are we talking about Karl Malone?
But
I hate Karl Malone.
Me too.
Why are we talking about him? Bryon Russell is not Karl Malone.
Because you're suggesting that somehow this call in Jordan's favor was unique.
And you're saying that would won the game.
It deserves to be debated about after I've won 6 championships out of 6 championship runs. I'm saying, don't even ask me that ridiculous question. Don't you have a nerve in the presence of my greatness to ask the question
so of you know what, Mama?
That dude off. Is that our takeaway? Is that what we focused on?
So here's the thing, Mama.
You want to ask me about one play against some guy we never even thought of? I made this dude, I gave this dude a reason to be talked about 20 years later. You wouldn't even be talking about this dude if it wasn't for that play.
Here's the thing. And
you wouldn't even remember his name.
Well, and here's the funny thing. We don't. A lot of us are calling him Byron.
That dude his name's Bryon. I know they don't even know his name.
Right.
Still.
And here's the beauty of it, Mandla. And Trey, I got to correct you, but here's the beauty of it, Mandla.
What?
Here's the beauty of it. If he would have just said that, I'm not answering that question. I'm the greatest. That's my answer. Instead of saying I had no material effect on that, that's the problem I have. And I don't believe that it was inconsistency by the officials. I didn't expect them to call. Like now, when I look back on it, I wouldn't expect that call. In 98, I was mad, but I wouldn't expect that call. So I'm not saying let's change it. I'm saying acknowledge it.
Right, but no, that's like That's like Floyd Mayweather acknowledging, do you think you lost this fight? Because the crowd thinks you lost it. You're going to say, no way.
That's not the same thing, TreVon. He never came close to losing. That's not the same thing.
But Reggie Miller just admitted, I pushed Jordan off.
I need them to ask Reggie Miller about the Greg Anthony mugging, because maybe he'll admit that now. Come on.
Or Derek with Brent Berry in San Antonio. I mean, the list goes on. But at this point, it's all
right. Kudos to Reggie. I like Reggie.
They don't know what they're doing.
I like Reggie. I saw him drop 44 in Paulie. I like Reggie. The hell of a shooter. Yeah. So he gets credit for that.
I talked to him.
He gets credit for that, but I wouldn't take away from Jordan for not admitting that. I'll give Reggie some credit for admitting it. But come on, you should be mad at the announcer for asking that ridiculous question in the midst of the last dance, the last word on the GOAT in the game.
The who?
Well, the real problem I have,
my word. They should call it the last word.
That's a great way to go out. That was a great way to go out.
About the GOAT. This last dance is the last word.
But you know what was an untruth, Mandla? When that man sits there with that little iPad Pro, Gary Payton. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. I mean, if you listen to the words that he said, he only said, I had no problem with Gary Payton, and he left it at that. But the whole laughing at Gary Payton, like Gary Payton wasn't a factor. George Karl got outcoached by Gus in that series. Like, it didn't even have to come to Phil Jackson. George Karl was just outclassed in that Sonic series. You know that.
When he said I had no problem with Gary, now that was, come on, man. You had a problem with Gary.
Well, they didn't have Gary on him in game 6. They just showed that game again yesterday.
What I want y'all to do is read Tim Grover's book, Relentless.
Okay.
I talked about it last week. Through my interview with Tim, I gained some knowledge that I did not know about. If you look at his stable of clients, they all have one thing. They all were killers. They were straight basketball killers. And what Tim is in a Phil Jackson Zen sense, okay, what he gave to those players was a pull from their dark side that they were able to transfer to victory by being more evil than their competitors to gain that victory. That's a lot which is lost in the tutelage of Tim Grover. You got Wade, you got Kobe, you got Barkley, you got Jordan, who are his biggest clients, but they all have something. They took from the evil, if you will, of them and made it into a win. And if you look at all of them, even including Barkley with no championships, there was a clutch aspect about him, and it was also clutch aspects about the rest of the people that I alluded to. But that was one of the biggest draws I took from Tim Grover's book, and also speaking to them, was pulling from a player's dark side, which is not a negative. It's a huge thing that I think that athletes should do, so they won't be apprehensive to take that last shot and play hot potato with their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I will read that book. So, because he did have.
He's not going to admit that. If he got a dark side, he's not going to admit that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he ever would admit that. I mean,
wait, are we talking about Michael Jeffrey Jordan?
I wouldn't expect him to.
No, he's not going to ever say, "Yeah, I pushed off." No, he's not going to say.
Oh,
that.
We're back on that. I thought we left that. We back on the push off.
No, that's his dark side.
Oh no, we saw that dude's dark side. Hey, I'm gonna tell you this. What it did for me.
That dude.
Let's stop playing.
Did you say that dude?
Yeah, but let me tell you, it's respect though. It's respect. No, it's respect. What the documentary did for me is, and Mandla, you haven't been here for all the episodes that we've talked about it, but just looking back, not only at the Dream Team, but looking back at that All-Star game, Kobe's first All-Star game, with all of those legends there, just we all got chills because you compare it to like today's All-Star game. No disrespect, but like it doesn't give you chills, right? That gave you chills, and I'm gonna say this: watching his journey all over again from the days when I had like the one pair of like name brand shoes that I had was the Jordan 1s. I don't know how that worked. Like I had some ponies, I had some Avias, and I had some Jordan 1s. And I'm talking when they came out. And that's, you know, I wasn't like Trey where I always had Jordans. Like I only owned 2 pair in my lifetime. And just going back down that journey, I won't say it made me appreciate it more because I always appreciated what Michael Jordan brought to the world, not just the game, but what Michael Jordan brought to the world. But it reminded me, like, how powerful is it that, first of all, shout out to Marcus Johnson again. How powerful is it that this dude, Michael Jordan, almost went to Adidas because of his respect for Marcus Johnson and what he was doing with Adidas, but that he takes a chance, like his parents say, hey, or his mom says, we want you to go meet with Nike. That was an amazing piece, yeah. Right? And then what they were expecting versus what they were expecting over 3 years versus what happened in 1 year.
In 1 year.
And there's no looking back. Chills. Chills. Like chills. I've always respected like what he brought to commerce, what he brought to Black athletes getting it, what he brought to the game of basketball. Didn't always appreciate the fact that he didn't say much outside of it, but he's definitely not the only athlete to refrain from speaking about a cause. But
we were not spoken at all with his platform. That was a big downside.
Yeah, but just respect, man. Respect for what he brought, and just the fact that. And I know that some of us here on this podcast don't agree with how he puts it, but just, you know, when he says, I never asked anything that I wouldn't expect from them. Like I lead by example. Now, however you want to take that to, you know, you feel like he was, you know, overbearing and all of that. I appreciate what he gave to Kobe. So I just want to say that because Kobe got a lot from him, and y'all know that Kobe is right there with Magic and Kareem as my favorites of all time. So just I appreciate that. And even though he didn't expect to have the kind of relationship he had with Kobe, the fact that Kobe was so relentless on the phone with Mike, and then Mike said, all right, let me just break down and let him into my world. I appreciate that because we saw greatness because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I kind of came away feeling, I guess I felt like I always already felt. I felt like I was never a huge Jordan fan as far as Magic was my favorite, always.
Oh, Magic. Okay, well, yeah, can't be mad at that.
There was no doubt about that. And head up, Magic would eat him alive. I still stand by that. The tapes don't lie. He couldn't guard Magic, but Magic couldn't guard him, so it was a wash. But after watching these episodes, you know, I still think he comes off as an idiot. I have respect for him as a player, but I also felt the same way about my favorite football player, Jerry Rice. You know, I love Jerry Rice on the football field, but Jerry Rice has made some of the most idiotic comments I have ever heard. And just when I hear him talk, I'm like, I cringe, you know, especially when he talks about things that have to do with the Black community and players who are standing up for rights and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, turn his mic off. Like, you're embarrassed. You're setting us back 10 or 15 years. Leave your conversation to the football field. Don't say, like, some people don't need to say anything. They just should only.
And I would say, understandably, that to me is most athletes. Like most athletes, we expect too much of them. to be able to speak on social issues. Just because they have the platform and just because they're popular. Most of them are not qualified to speak on those issues. They need to just let just a few that are qualified do to be outspoken, and the rest need to just pass on it altogether, because there are very few athletes who come up today who are well-rounded enough to have something worthwhile to say on social issues.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think that, especially for you, Rod, because you came up in the days when Jim Brown was making moves, and Lou Alcindor was changing his name to Kareem, and Cassius was changing his name to Muhammad. So you were used to like our main athletes, black athletes, speaking out, and so by the time you got down to your grandkids growing up with Jordan, it was like it was disappointing to you. So we understand.
Well, each of them too, though. Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Kareem, each of them, if they chose to, they had a peer, a sports figure that they would point to as an example of who not to be. I mean, they had some people that they would call an absolute outright Uncle Tom on air.
Right.
So they knew that they were standing apart, separate and apart from most athletes, and they had an extreme alternative example that they would put out there and just give it to them.
Yeah.
And Muhammad, nobody was more likely to do that than Muhammad Ali. Jim Brown, he would only do that in certain settings. He wouldn't really talk about too many of his peers and what he thought about them politically in open. But if you had him in a more smaller speaking setting, man, he talked about a lot of his peers in some really critical ways.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. That there's a period of time where there was a movement going on. So obviously everybody who was around during that time was more impacted by those movements. Our brother talked about the anti-apartheid movement during that time. I went to the Million Man March. I took like 9 students there. I was working on campus, got some campus funding, took 9 brothers out there, and guess who we ran into up on one of the hills? He was not down in the crowd. He was up on one of the hills, and I just went up on the hill because I wanted to get a better view of what was happening down there, because it was so crowded. A million cats down there on the lawn. But guess who I saw hanging out up on the hill by himself? You got a chance to rap with him for a couple of minutes. Saw Rasheed Wallace up there. Ran into Rasheed.
Oh, wow.
On the hill at the Million Man March, just chilling by himself, away from the crowd, but definitely out there and supporting the event. So, those folks who are wired that way, they tend to be a little separate and apart. And these institutions, the universities, the industry itself, they put a lot of hard work into making sure these guys have no consciousness. It just don't work out that way by accident. They put a lot of work into promoting those who have no consciousness and muting those who do. So it's tough to come out as an athlete who's outspoken in that way, which only elevates those who are. It really shows how special they are, the ones who are willing to risk everything to be outspoken in that way.
Absolutely.
And nobody was more upset than I have been about Mike, only because I'm such a fan of his. I wanted him to be better in that way. It just drive me crazy to hear him talking. I was definitely a fan of him just shutting up on any social issue, because he could not do anything but embarrass himself and do detriment whenever he was in that kind of position. He was not that guy.
Yeah,
right.
I'd rather them say no comment than just speak and hold us back. And I think that's what bothered me about him. He would make certain comments, basically, I guess in Kareem's language, as long as you're getting paid, nothing else matters. And so I started seeing Jerry Rice doing. I'm like, dude, I've been loving you forever. Like, no, just stay quiet. Don't say anything. And he would just spew him, especially during the Kaepernick situation. I mean, Jerry Rice was full of talk. And,
so this is very disconcerting for me. being that Jerry Rice is my favorite player of all time, I actually didn't know that Rodney felt a similar way about Jerry Rice, but now I have to go back and look at the things that Jerry Rice has said because I missed that. I completely missed it, Rod. I didn't know.
Mhm.
And so it's disconcerting because I already have a dilemma. Shout out to Nelly and Kelly Rowland. I already have a dilemma in that DeBartolo was just pardoned by that fool we have running the country right now. Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was just recently pardoned. And who was campaigning for this to happen? Jerry. That's fine because, Eddie changed your life. And Eddie was done wrong. However, he's thanking the president for this. So I already know, like, he might come out and campaign for this guy or something because of what he did for DeBartolo. So I already had this dilemma. Like, am I gonna have to go against Jerry Rice at some point? Now you're telling me that he's already. Hey, Munchie, I'm on camera, honey. Shh. Now you're telling me that he's. Shh. Now you're telling me that he's already acting a fool. So that's very disappointing. I didn't know that. And Jerry Rice, I'm disappointed in you if Rodney's telling the truth.
Yeah, just over the years, I've heard him make comments that I would just shake my head at. But it happens.
I talked to Kareem, with my piece in the Nation magazine. I talked to him, Barkley, Grant Hill, Kobe Donovan. I can't find the exact quote, but what he essentially told me was, he chose to be who he is because he had the ability to do so. He had, coming from his father, he had a well-rounded sense of who he was, not only as a man, but as a black man, But he basically told me that's like what you guys have already said. That some of these guys shouldn't be talking anything, but he essentially, because I was trying to push him to speak about why it's a responsibility for all black athletes to have a conscious soul about them, And he told me he pushed back on that, and he said, "Look, it's their choice." He said you got to give them a choice to be that. If they grow and develop into what we want them to be and speak vocally about different social. I don't think we should expect them all to do it. There's something that I, matured in my perception about athletes and consciousness, because I don't think that we should be looking to celebrities. If celebrities want to speak, then that's good because it broadens the perspective on things. But if they don't choose to do so, they shouldn't.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, once again, I want to thank our YouTube viewership for tuning in 12 episodes in a row. Please stay with us. Please hit subscribe. Anchor listenership, Spotify listenership. Please subscribe also. Please follow. You'll get notified. You'll get a notification anytime that we drop a new episode. We're by and large dropping new episodes on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We will keep that up as much as we can. This will drop on Tuesday, even though we're not recording it on Tuesday. So thank you for your loyalty. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Mandla, this is the time of the episode where we go to what's called the closeout. The closeout is where we basically go around the horn and we give, as Dick Shapp would say, a parting shot. So we call it the closeout, but we're going to invite you to go first and just give us a closing thought. It could be about whatever you want it to be about, and then we'll go around the horn. So, Mandla, your closeout.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Anthony, for inviting me to come on. It's always an interesting pivot trying to, relate the work that I do to athletics and to the athletic arena. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I appreciate you and all the other brothers on this particular podcast, just because I think you all kind of work with that pivot very well. I think it's important for us to kind of think about what education means for our student athletes. And I mean, in the broadest sense, I talked about growth and people, developing into manhood and being able to bring that personality and that character into their platforms. I'd like to think, for example, that if we had an opportunity to impact Michael Jordan as a young student athlete at North Carolina, if we had a chance to kind of engage him, he would be a different type of student athlete. He might be that kind of student athlete who could speak out on social issues. I look at Kobe Bryant as like the one that got away, because I actually met him right after he got drafted by the Lakers. He came up to the UCLA campus. One of our students brought him there for a party on campus. I toured him on campus, and I was very impressed, with his intellect up to that point, and, being able to speak 5 languages. Some of the questions he asked were particularly insightful. And I like to think that his impact could have been greater if he had the right kind of mentorship. So I really put that on us as a society, whoever considers themselves a person in any kind of a leadership position, how do we think better about how we impact what we'd like to see in our student athletes? How do we play a better role in defining what a really impactful student athlete or athlete should look like in our society? Why don't we take on some of that responsibility and do less in terms of, kind of judging them externally? It's going to come down to who they are. It comes down to who we help them to become. It's not just on them individually. So really appreciate being able to engage that discussion with you all, and kind of look forward to checking out how you want to congratulate you as well for your 12 consecutive episodes, and look forward to your future episodes as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. It's very weird hearing Mandla call me Anthony, because my entire time knowing him, Mandla has always called me Q. And Trey's got an interesting story about that, because he claims that there were times back in my college days, and he was in college at the same time, that he would call out Q and I wouldn't respond, which is weird because Mandla knows that's not the truth. But Trey always had a funny story about that. But shout out to Mandla for coming here, coming on. We appreciate you. You gave some wonderful insight to us. You gave wonderful insight to our viewers and listeners, and we appreciate you. We appreciate you. Where can the listeners and viewers find more information about New World Education?
Oh, yeah. New World Education, www.newworlded.com. That's my website, where people can kind of check out what we do, what we're about, and the kind of services we provide. But I'm also posting regularly on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Going to try to up my YouTube game and post a lot more of our videos of some of the sessions that I do with students. But all of those platforms, newworlded.com and New World Education on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you. Trey, your turn.
Yeah, first I wanted to say, man, thanks for coming in, man, and spending this time with us and educating us and let us know what it is that you do, man. We really enjoyed this time with you, and dropping the great knowledge that you have, that let the man play. It wasn't a foul too much. And if it is, don't ever admit it, But yeah, man, we appreciate the time that you spend in here. And to all our listeners out there, man, I want to thank you guys all for listening, taking this time to come in and let us have this conversation with you and things of that sort. Also, please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about us, and come and join us, and let us into your. Thanks for letting us into your your living rooms and while you're driving in the car, and whatever that may be. But thank you again. Everybody stay safe out there, and yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trey. Rod.
Just want to really quick, man, thank our guest. Gave me some stuff that I can give to my son when we have our little nightly discussions about sports and about futures and about life and that kind of stuff. I constantly preach to him that good money doesn't come easy. So this is just one more thing to add to what I already talked to him about. I'll definitely go get that Relentless book and read that. he kind of, you kind of hurt my feelings with that MJ the GOAT stuff. That comment is gonna drive me to drinking. Considering, I got this Laker purple behind me, and this is a Laker household, and Abdul-Jabbar is clearly the GOAT, and there's no close second.
Okay, I see the Laker hat.
Mizzo don't argue that, but it is what it is. But yeah, man, I had fun on this one, and probably a lot more that we all could have said that we didn't. But the info was great at any rate, and I hope everyone stays safe and tune in to the next one.
Cool. Hardcore piece.
Okay, well, the reason why I asked the Mandla question about what athletes would lose in this COVID space, because I really wanted the kids out there, whether they be in high school or college, to understand that they are in a great position to redefine the process, and they really have to take advantage of this time instead of looking at it as a negative. They can, as you said, utilize new resources, especially these online platforms, to gain an ability that they would not even probably imagine if COVID-19 didn't happen. Go out and get your star. Speed to your star, like Mandela said, which was so eloquent about the onus is on you, and that is not something that is a pressurized thing. It is an advantageous thing to be able to go get and develop your talent, whatever that may be. And we don't have to talk about academics or athletics, even arts and sciences, whatever you are talented at, go get it now. You have a great opportunity in a almost like a vacuum right now to be able to ascend to your prominence. Go out and do that. Go out and do that, and do it now.
Wait, that's it? Well, okay, I guess that's one of those drop the mic situations. You usually have a longer closeout, so I was on something else. I didn't know you were done. So you made me think of something, Mizzo, which, and I know that your comment was inspired by Mandla, so that would be both of you guys inspiring this memory. Goody Mob, man, you need to get up, get out, and get something. Very, very, very important message, right? Listen, I'm so honored to be with the three of you on a weekly basis or twice a week, whatever it winds up being. And then Mandla, you joined us today. You're only our second guest ever, so thank you again. Both people have Chicago ties, so thanks again. It made sense for you to come. You're someone that has impacted my life in such a way that I can't even put it into words. So thank you again for all that you've done for my development. I appreciate you. I appreciate the gentlemen that are here with me. And I want to thank the viewers once again. I want to thank the listeners once again. And for my closeout, let's go back to, there's a pandemic. Everyone's got options. Everybody got choices. That's right, E40. But here's the thing. When you make the choice to refrain from or refuse to wear a mask in public, when you wear your mask incorrectly and you've got your nose not covered up, you want to be a daredevil? That's fine. But you're at a point now where you are endangering everyone else. And that's, you can, because just like reckless driving. Kayla, I'm recording. Please stop. You're in a situation where you're putting everyone else at risk, and that's the problem, because people still do need to go out and get groceries or whatever else they need to get, and they're not signing up to be put in that kind of danger, especially if they are wearing a mask. The thing is, you're not just putting yourself in danger when you don't wear one. You can do more transmission when you don't have a mask on, and people can still be hit even if they do. So just please think about that. Think about wearing the mask the right way. Like when you just have your mouth covered, or you have it on, but it's down here, only covering up your bottom lip. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's not cool. I'm not trying to preach, but I'm trying to stay alive, and I do have to go out of the house. So I'm just asking nicely, please switch that up. We'd all appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Everybody stay safe. Please stay safe. There are so many crazy things still happening in the world. Even with this, people are still doing nutso things. So watch out. Be careful. And do the right thing. Shout out to Spike Lee. All right, y'all. Thanks again.
All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate being in this space with y'all. Take care now.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Be safe and healthy.
Be safe and healthy.